Welcome to Zoom O'Clock with your host, Tessy Antony de Nassau. This podcast brings you enlightening discussions with leading experts and public figures directly to your ears.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zoom O'Clock with your host, Tessy Antony de Nassau. We are in 2023, and this is our first podcast for the year with the most fantastic and inspiring woman all the way in Saudi Arabia. Dania, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tessy. I'm really happy to be here.
So, Dania, before we get into the grilling questions, let me please introduce you to our audience so they can really understand what an incredible woman you are. Having obtained a bachelor degrees in modern history and politics from Royal Holloway University, in addition to an MA in international business at Hult International Business School in London, academia has played a pivotal role in Dania's life. Her achievements then in motorsports are first Saudi female to hold a national competition license for speed bike circuit racing issued by the Saudi Automobile and Motorcycle Federation in 2019. First woman globally to win an FIA cross-country World Cup T3 category in 2021. First Saudi woman to compete the Dakar Rally and first Arab woman to finish in the top 10. Result was the 8th in the T3 category. During the 2019-2020 season of the UAE National Sportsbike Superseries, she participated in the Ducati Cup and was awarded the Rookie of the Year trophy. The Rookie or Rocky? She had an accident on track.
Rookie, yeah.
Rookie, I like it. She had an accident on track, which put her on a road of recovery. Using that time as a way to reflect, she wrote about her experience in the form of short stories. She then published them in a book entitled Freefall. Copies are currently being sold in KSA, so in Saudi. After her recovery, she entered the rally world, beginning with the FIA cross-country Bajas World Cup 2021, completed multiple rounds of the championship in the T3 category, and was successful in gaining the points needed to win the World Cup. In January 2022, she participated in the Dakar Rally and was the first Saudi woman to ever complete the race and first Arab woman in finishing in the top 10 of her group. Dania Akeel, meet the 34-year-old Saudi woman taking on one of the world's toughest motor races. Wow, Dania, what an introduction. It's just incredible.
It's been a really fun ride. It's been a fun ride.
You're very humble, honestly. I was in the military, but this is really impressive because, I grew up in a society and in a community where, women kind of like could push the boundaries a bit faster and a bit quicker over the last decades. And as you know, in Saudi, women were only to drive cars in the public space from 2018 onwards, which I think is really incredible for all the achievements in that period of time that you're racing, that you have achieved. One must say that barely over 2 years ago, you, a Jeddah-born athlete, had never ever tried this type of racing. I think that's incredible. Not only that, you also, as I said before, 2018 women on the street and everything. So let me ask you the first question. How did you get into racing, knowing that at the time when you grew up, women were not even allowed on any public road to drive?
Well, to be honest, the simple answer is I didn't think about becoming a racing driver at all. I didn't think about cross-country, circuit racing, anything like that. All I knew growing up was that I really loved to drive when it came to bicycles or quad bikes in the desert or the farm or the private areas. Things like motorcycles and dirt bikes. I used to enjoy riding those, and I knew that I loved it as a fun thing to do in my leisure time. So when I would travel, as you mentioned, I studied in the UK for university, and I was actually in school in the UK from when I was 14 years old until I graduated, and then went to do my bachelor's and master's. So during those years, I got my driving license, and I was driving on the public road outside of Saudi. So that, of course, put me in a good position to gain the basic driving skills for the public road. It is different, obviously, than the things that you do when you race, but that's the foundation. So I had the foundation early on, as people outside of Saudi did. So in the UK, my age was 17 when I got my license, and so that put me in a good position at the start. What helped later was that I got my motorcycle license when I was 27, and then I had a job in Dubai when I was 30. So when I lived in Dubai for those few months, I used to go to the racing track there, and just for the week on the weekends, just for fun. And slowly, I started to pick it up as a, it was still a hobby, but I was getting more excited about looking at it as a potential avenue to explore in terms of racing. So when the season came along a few months after I had been going as an open track day, the racing season started. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'll take the tests and I'll go for the license and I'll enter the National Cup. And that's kind of how it got rolling. After that, I got into cross country because in Saudi, they started to host the Dakar Rally, which you mentioned. And the Saudi Motorsport Federation had obviously known that I was racing in Dubai, because they issued the license for me when I passed the test. So they introduced me to the Dakar Rally. They showed me the world of cross country and said, this race exists in Saudi. That was in 2020. Said we'd really like to encourage Saudi citizens to participate. It is here after all. So that's how I ended up in the cross country world. I didn't race in 2020 in cross country, but I did in 2021. So from the time that women were driving in 2018 to the time that I started racing in cross country in 2021, it was, I had my own sort of history on the road already, having driven outside of Saudi since 2006. And then later driving in the UAE in the racing season in 2019, and then finally moving into cross country in 2021. So that was sort of my driving history. That's how I ended up in the cross country car. But you are right, I didn't try that car until the race itself in 2021. But my goal that race wasn't to, reach any spectacular or particular time to finish the race. I just wanted to get used to the car, to become familiar with it, and to finish the race. That was my goal. So I didn't have any pressure on myself, or, I didn't really need to perform in a certain way. I just wanted to have this experience, to finish the rally. And that was the first time I drove the rally car, was in the Baja World Cup of 2021. It was a great experience.
Wow, that is incredible. So a little bit more about the Dakar then. So the Dakar began life in 1978 as the Paris-Dakar Rally, for the people who don't know. It ran annually from France to Senegal until 2007, but when the 2008 event was cancelled due to the security concerns, the rally was transplanted across the Atlantic and ran through South America until 2020, when it moved again then to Saudi Arabia. So, but tell me just briefly before we go to the next question. So when you said you just want to finish the rally, the Dakar Rally, you hear all of these stories, people getting hurt, people getting lost, getting stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere. What was your experience for the first time? You finished it, but while you were racing, how was the experience for you? Explain to me kind of like, talk me through that Dakar race briefly.
I had a wonderful first Dakar. I was really happy, actually. I finished it, but I finished it in top 10. So when I finished 8th, we were 48 cars in the T3 group, and I didn't have an idea of what kind of result I was looking for. My goal was to finish the rally. But when I finished in 8th, I was very, very happy. And I'll credit that to just how much I enjoyed the drive. Every day I was so excited to be in the car. I mean, people talk about how tough it is and, a lot can happen. And that's all true, of course. A lot can happen in a Dakar rally. But I found that I just fundamentally enjoyed driving. really so much. And if I just looked at it that way and had that feeling and just stayed in that sort of mindset, then I was just doing something that I love to do. I didn't take any risk. I crossed the terrain in the smoothest way that I knew how as a driver of that level at the time. I had an excellent co-driver, so we didn't have any issues with the getting lost or navigation. And I did make one mistake. We had actually gotten up to 6th position, and then I made a driving mistake, which cost us a few positions. We went down to 15th, and then with 5 days to go, we climbed back up to finish in 8th. So I definitely did make a few driving mistakes, which were impactful and which stayed with me. But I learned from them. I haven't seen myself make similar mistakes in terms of what caused the error at the time. I've still obviously made driving mistakes since then, but maybe not something exactly that way. So as long as I learned, from these driving errors and what I had done, what I could have done differently, then I, call that a successful experience. So for me, I just really loved it. It was every day we would drive for hundreds of kilometers, come back to the camp, clean up, eat, sleep, and then wake up and do it again. So for me, it was just really a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. I must come and see you once when you're out. And
Please
about.
do. Come to the next Dakar.
Oh, I tell you, count me in. I'm going to be a co-driver. No. So what would you say then? Is it never really too late to follow your dreams? Like you have Harrison Ford, who was a carpenter at the age of 30 and did not become a household name in the acting industry until he was like mid-30s. Oprah Winfrey, the same. She was 32 when a career break happened because her talk show became nationally syndicated. Jeff Bezos, same, extremely successful by mid-30s. And then J.K. Rowling, her first book wasn't published until she was 34. So what do you think? Late bloomer,
first of all,
at 30s. Is the 30s, is that the new 20s? Or the 50s?
Well,
Does age matter nowadays anymore?
I don't look too closely at age. I spend time with people that are many years older, many years younger than me. I don't think too much about numbers in terms of what they mean or what they translate to in terms of behavior or where you're at in your career. I don't think age is a uniform indicator of that. What I would say is that it's never too late, but that depends on your intent and your behavior and your patterns, right? I mean, there's got to be change if you want to do something different. And then that requires a series of decisions or choices that are going to have your life run a little bit differently. And that choice is up to the person at any age. They could make that choice at 15. They could make that choice at 68. It actually doesn't matter. It's what do you want out of your own life? And in my case, I didn't have this idea that I wanted to be a driver or even a successful person. I just wanted to find something that gave me motivation, that made me want to work, that made me want to spend time. I was looking for something that would allow me to enjoy the process of creating, the process of achieving goals, the process. It's all about the process for me, the steps. I didn't know that I would end up in cross country. I didn't know that I would end up on a motorcycle in a circuit. I didn't know that I would end up doing this all year as a season. I just knew that I was in Dubai. For example, I knew that in high school, I wanted to get my driving license because I loved driving. I did that and then carried on with my studies, started working in different companies, all the while knowing that I love driving, but I didn't think about it too much. When I was in Dubai, I had a job, but I also liked going to the track, and I saw that I really enjoyed doing that. And then I saw an opportunity that I could race. And it was all done in these very minuscule steps that I would just followed what had attracted me in terms of, how to spend effort to improve, to grow. It just made me feel good because I would try to get better at the sport. And then when I got into cross country, I could see that in comparison to the national cup that I was competing in, cross country was an international platform. It was a World Cup. The Dakar Rally is a world, renowned rally, and it could potentially attract sponsors to do this in a financially sustainable way compared to the national cup that I was in before. That didn't require too much of a investment. That was more of a leisurely hobby. Some people do it as a profession, of course, but I wasn't in that situation. So I saw the cross country as a potential to be sponsored, that world, and I approached potential companies for my first race. And I did everything in these minuscule steps. All the while, I had other jobs. I worked on the C20 Secretariat team when the G20 Forum was held in Saudi Arabia in 2020. And I honestly enjoyed that experience a lot. Having studied history, politics, and business, I have a big interest in public policy and social and economic issues. And I knew that I liked doing that on a 9-to-5 basis. I also knew that I wanted to race in a rally and I needed to find money for it. So I did everything in steps. The G20 was a temporary job because the forum obviously moved after the 2020. And then when the G20 had left, I saw that, do you know what? I don't want to look for another job for this moment in time. I'd actually rather focus on finding sponsors for my first rally. And then after the first rally went well, I decided, let me look for the same sponsors or new ones also to add on to my second rally. And then with that, I started to look more long-term. How about 5 rallies? How about the Dakar? How about the full season? How about 3 seasons? So everything was done in steps.
So when you talk about funding, that is actually a really, really good way of leading into a question that is actually, a lot of people struggle with that, especially women. You see it in the finance world, VC investments and so on. But I also have seen that with women who work in extreme sports, and they just, they struggle to get funding because they are women, really. And that sounds, that nowadays we still need to kind of like ask these questions and kind of like point out that, women and men and, it's sad, but it is still a reality for a lot of, in a lot of domains, including the domain that you are as well. So what would you say, was it difficult for you to get funding? Did people say no as well at the beginning? Were they like, come back when you're a bit more famous or something like that? Or how was the general feeling when you approached people for funding to help you out? Because it's an expensive sport, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's actually a really interesting space. I mean, like in any business, my season or my rally experience was like a startup, so I had to look for investors. And you've got to have a proof of work, right? You've got to have something to show that can give them a bit of confidence in their investment. In my case, I didn't have that because how can I race without funding? And how can I prove that my race is valuable to show the potential investors? So it is a little bit what seems like a catch-22, but in reality, it's not. So what I decided was that I'm only going to pitch for one rally and I'm going to be as economically sound or at least as well as I could do it. Yeah. I mean, I didn't choose the most sought after vehicle. I wasn't extravagant in my model choice. For the first rally, I needed to perform. I needed data to motivate investors to have faith. On the same, other side of the coin, you need that faith to come in first as well, to some degree. But when you are asking an investor to invest in 5 races or a season, you're asking for a lot of faith and a lot of trust. So I asked for 1 race and they could afford this 1 race, right? And I approached multiple companies, some of whom said no, and that was fine. And the idea is not to get discouraged, but also have a selling point. So I could tell that when I conversed with a potential sponsor, I could see what they would want out of it. Some wanted direct sales for their product, and I could be honest and say, I think this will get you what you're looking for because it's in the automotive space. Or I could be truthful and say, you know what, you're in construction, for example, I don't see how this would benefit you. So you've got to target your sponsor and have a pitch that's relevant to them, and it's got to be true because your partner needs to get as much out of the investment as you do, right? So I approached one company that's in the health industry, so absolutely no marketing interest for them, but I approached them from a CSR perspective, and they were very happy to invest in a project that supported women empowerment and encouraged women to excel in spaces that were previously not sort of linked with women necessarily. So that was my approach with one sponsor, and they were very happy with this message. And because I had asked for an investment in one race, it was a feasible situation for them. Another investor, no, I went to a oil lubricant at the time, and that's very direct. That's marketing for them, because you are working in a space where people are going potentially to use their product. So I approached it from that perspective, and also asked for an amount that would cover one race. And with that, we were able to get, and at the end of the day, I had decided that I was going to try and race anyway, even if I had to use some of my savings to do it. So I also didn't put too much pressure on the sponsor. I told them I'm also investing from my own savings to do this, because I have faith that this is a good situation and the outcome could be beneficial for everybody. When the sponsors, I can't speak on their behalf, but when you show that you have faith as well and you're willing to, put that trust in yourself, I think what I assume is that it encourages others as well. Also while giving them the relevant message. So I am a woman and I am driving, and it is the truth. And if this speaks to their CSR initiative, then that's great. And for the other company, it's a relevant industry for them, and that's also the truth. So they were on board. After that first rally, I sent a full report of all of the PR clippings that we had, and they were very happy with the feedback. And then I approached them for one other rally, just one. And I said, there's one next week. I'm really happy to keep going. And I also offered it at a discounted price, because the branding had already been done on the car. And I wanted to keep them motivated to stay with me. So having it done at a discounted price, I thought would be easier to kind of keep the thread going. Of course, it didn't give me a return financially, but I was thinking more long term. And I was just happy to cover the cost. And even just if I had to eat some of the costs, I was looking at it like an investment. So when I did that, it helped a lot. And then I approached them during the summer and I said, actually, now I'd like to go for 3 races, because we have enough points to potentially win the World Cup in the T3. And I showed them the points for the FIA. And because I had a very clear goal and I said, I'm going for the cup, for the win, this was also a nice way to keep the thread going. It wasn't an aimless sort of product. It was, we're going with a goal. And we did win the World Cup for the T3 in cross country Baja. That was the first time it happened in history for a woman. And I was very happy that everything had pieced together that way. Obviously I was committed to the driving. And by then I had really promised myself that I was going to do everything I can to win that cup. And we were lucky. That's how I approached it from a financial perspective.
Are there many women from Saudi who are racing?
There's a few. Yes, I've seen a few. There are a few.
Okay, well, good, because you hear always that's a bit of the problem here where I am from, in these regions. You hear always these awful things about Saudi and everything that is happening there. But I myself, I was in Saudi. I flew a plane when women were not even allowed to drive yet, and the people that were kind of like showing me how to do it and who were flying the planes next to me were all women, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I came back, my mom was so worried, and I said to her, hey, it's okay. I really, I worked with incredible people. There's so much innovation, and there's so many women doing such incredible things, but people don't hear about it because that is not in the media's interest, right? So it is just nice to share some of these success stories like yours, to make people see, hey, there is some incredible skill and talent in Saudi, and just have a closer look. So I think it's really cool. So I have a few more questions, brief ones that really interest me always. For example, I'm a geek. I love reading. And is there any books that you have read or that you're reading where you're like, wow, if you want to learn more about this, or even if it's unrelated to what you're doing now, something that you read that really got your perseverance, that got you up and running, like your mantra book? Is there something like that, or a podcast you follow where you're like, wow, these tips are so amazing, or a quote?
I honestly, I love to read a lot, and I don't have one particular book to mention, because so many books have led me into other books, and I just kind of get into these just themes. What I love reading about a lot is psychology, behavioral economics, And I think that these helped me a lot with racing. I had started reading books like this from a long time ago about how to change your patterns and habits and things like that. Books written by neuroscientists or psychologists or economists or even politicians and historians. I studied history, so I love reading history books as well. And I think you can learn a lot from the past. So it's difficult for me to single out a book, but definitely I've had a lot of help from that world. Same for the quotes. I'm sorry. And then also, it's just really difficult to stick to one thing.
So much out there, right? Yeah.
And you need different things at different times. I haven't found that universal, sentence or this one book that's covered everything. There's so much material that can support people through whatever they're going through whenever they need it. And, when my friends talk to me and they say, what's a good book you could recommend? I have to ask them, what are you looking for? What's drawing you? What's attracting you? What do you want to do? What's the outcome? What's the goal? And then maybe I can give a more direct answer.
That's a good answer. So, I think we're running out of time. Tell me, where can we find you? People get inspired now, where are you racing next? Where could someone come and see you or follow you? Do you have a blog? Or how can people, if they say like, wow, Dania, I want to see her, she's my inspiration, or my daughter would love her. Tell me, where can I find you, Dania?
Well, I have my Instagram account that's quite active. It's Dania.Akeel. And then my Facebook page, Dania Akeel. I also have a website, daniaakeel.com, but that's not updated all the time. It's more the social media stuff. And for the racing calendar, I'll do the cross-country Baja's World Cup again, and that goes all over. The next one is in Qatar, and then it goes to Italy, Spain, Poland, Portugal. But that's all on the FIA website. So the Baja cross-country Baja World Cup, and hopefully, so far the plan is also to do Dakar 2024, and you can find those also on social media, whether it's Instagram or TikTok and things like that. They're all on there. Dakar Rally.
Are you looking for any more sponsors if someone is listening and says, I want my logo on her chest?
If someone is listening, yes. The reason I am looking for sponsors, I've got an amazing support system with my sponsors, Toyota, Talmud Hertz, and BF Goodrich, Gibi Tires, and Maghrabi. But, when you have more sponsors, it allows you to expand your season. So to do more races, more events, and it also allows you to enhance your season. So whether that means you can choose how you spend your product, I guess, but whether that means you spend it on training, spend it on, spending time with professionals who have had more experience and could maybe help you to cut some corners, or rather, make less mistakes. So there's always more to do. And of course, the more the merrier, because really with racing, it's there's so many events and championships, and they all complement each other, because at the end of the day, the skill set you need to drive is, it differs a little bit from stream to stream within the racing world, but there are these fundamentals that will help you across anything. So I would love more sponsors so I could spend more time in the car.
Thank you. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Dania, for all your time. I wish you all the best, and definitely when you're in Spain, Italy, or Portugal, that is definitely somewhere where I could come and see you if I don't see you in the Middle East before. But and if you have in Zurich or Luxembourg, you just call me up and you'll be my guest.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, and I really appreciate you following and taking out of your time. So I really thank you so much.
Well, same to you. And we keep chatting offline, and all the best. Keep rocking, you Rocky.
Thanks a lot. You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this Sumo Club. We hope this discussion was insightful and has provoked some new ideas for you. Please share and subscribe. If you like to keep in touch with your host, you can find her on Instagram under Tessy_from_Luxembourg and on Twitter under Tessy_DE.